Something major just happened, and if you or someone you know is hoping to live, work, or reunite with family in the United States, you cannot afford to miss this. The U.S. government has just signed off on the most significant green card reform we've seen in years, and it officially takes effect this August 2025. Whether you're already in the process of applying or have been planning to begin soon, everything is about to change. We're talking new categories, stricter eligibility rules, updated quotas, processing changes, and even priority reshuffles that could completely alter your timeline or shut the door altogether for certain applicants. This isn't just a tweak to the system. It's a full-scale overhaul of how legal permanent residency will work going forward. And yes, it impacts family-sponsored immigrants, employment-based applicants, diversity visa hopefuls, and even those with long-standing petitions in the pipeline. Some applicants may suddenly find themselves bumped down the list, while others might discover new pathways opening that didn't exist just a few months ago. And here's the thing, most people haven't heard about this yet. The law passed quietly, tucked behind political headlines and summer distractions. But for millions around the world, this is the update that changes everything. If you're planning to move to the US, or you've got relatives waiting anxiously for their turn, this could speed up your case or slam the brakes on it. So don't just scroll past, stay with me, because in this video, I'll break down exactly what's changing, who's being affected, and what you must do right now to stay ahead of this massive green card overhaul. If you find this information helpful, and I promise you will, do me a quick favor. Smash that like button so this reaches more people who desperately need to know what's going on. Let's dive in. Let's start by zooming in on exactly what this new green card overhaul is about, and more importantly, why it's happening now. The U.S. immigration system has long been under pressure, not just politically, but practically. Backlogs, outdated quotas, a lack of modernization, and years of piecemeal policy adjustments have created a system that simply hasn't kept up with the times. Families have been separated for years. Skilled workers have faced endless delays, and hopeful newcomers are often left in limbo, unsure of whether they'll ever get the opportunity to build a life in America. So when lawmakers in Washington finally came together and passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill that directly impacts the green card process, it wasn't just political, it was personal for millions of people. And now, with the changes kicking in this August 2025, we're seeing a full reset of how the U.S. is going to prioritize and process legal permanent residency. Now, let's talk about what that really means for you, not in vague legal terms, but in real, human language. One of the biggest shifts is how applicants will now be evaluated. Previously, green card eligibility, especially in family-based categories, followed a fairly rigid structure with specific preference categories and annual quotas that hadn't been updated in decades. But under the new law, there's now a more dynamic point-based system being introduced for certain pathways, especially for employment-based applicants and even some family reunification cases. That means that your background, including your job skills, education level, language proficiency, and even your ties to the U.S., could now play a bigger role in whether your green card application is prioritized or delayed. This doesn't mean the old categories are completely gone, far from it. Family-sponsored immigration is still at the core of the green card system, but the process now includes extra filters, like digital documentation checks and online interviews for overseas applicants. The government wants to streamline the process using technology, but at the same time, they're tightening scrutiny to reduce fraud and abuse. This sounds efficient on paper, but in reality, it may introduce a few extra steps for honest applicants who are just trying to do things the right way. It's not necessarily bad, but it does mean more preparation and less room for error. And here's something many people haven't realized yet. The diversity visa program, the famous green card lottery, is also getting a major makeover. For years, the DV program operated on a lottery-based draw that favored people from countries with low immigration rates to the U.S. That's still technically true. But now the application process has been modernized and integrated into the same digital infrastructure as the other visa categories. This means shorter windows to apply, stricter verification requirements, and automatic disqualification for even small errors in the form. It's becoming less of a lucky draw and more of a high-stakes, precision-driven race. So if you or someone in your family is planning to apply under this program, you'll need to be extremely careful. One wrong move could cost you that chance altogether. Speaking of chances, let's talk about the employment-based green card categories, because this is where some of the most dramatic changes are taking place. The U.S. is shifting toward what it calls a strategic immigration model. That's government speak for attracting high-skilled talent in tech, healthcare, engineering, and advanced research. Under the new law, applicants in these sectors are being given priority processing, expedited reviews, and in some cases, fee waivers or reductions to encourage them to apply. But here's the twist. The system is also placing limits on certain low-skill or non-essential categories, which may result in longer wait times for people outside of the preferred skill areas. This is a huge shift from the traditional model, where all employment-based categories followed similar timelines. Now, if you're a software engineer or a nurse, you might see your application get fast-tracked. But if your skills fall outside these areas, even if you're a hardworking and dedicated employee, you might find yourself stuck in a much slower queue. This part of the reform is already sparking controversy. Critics say it creates a two-tier immigration system that favors certain groups while sidelining others. Supporters argue it's about economic necessity and global competitiveness. Either way, it's happening, and if you're in the middle of your employment-based green card journey, you need to know where you stand under these new rules. But it's not just about individuals applying for themselves. Family reunification, one of the cornerstones of U.S. immigration, is also being reshaped. The new law has added flexibility in some areas, like expanding eligibility for same-sex partners and stepchildren, and allowing digital documentation for distant family members. At the same time, it's introduced stricter income requirements and more complex affidavits of support for sponsors. So while it's easier in some respects to prove the relationship, it may be harder to prove financial readiness, especially for sponsors living outside major U.S. metro areas where incomes tend to be lower. Another notable update: for those already living in the U.S. on temporary visas like H-1Bs or student visas, the adjustment of status process has been revamped. Previously, many applicants had to wait years to switch from temporary to permanent status due to bureaucratic slowdowns. But now, thanks to an expanded premium processing option and centralized digital adjudication hubs, many of these applications are expected to move faster, at least for those who qualify. The bad news? The fees for premium processing have gone up significantly, and the documentation requirements are much more detailed. In other words, faster service comes at a higher cost and a bigger administrative burden. Even if you're not directly affected, maybe you're a U.S. citizen watching this for your spouse or your parents abroad, it's still vital to stay informed. The rules for sponsorship have changed. The timelines for interviews have shifted. The very forms themselves are different now, with new digital versions replacing the old paper ones. It's no longer just about filling out a form and waiting. It's about understanding the system, meeting the new benchmarks, and navigating a more digitized but also more demanding process. And here's a little silver lining. Despite the challenges, this overhaul also brings some long overdue transparency. Applicants will now be able to track their case status more accurately, receive real-time notifications, and access multilingual support through a revamped USCIS portal. This is a game changer for people who've spent years feeling like they were sending documents into a black hole. It's far from perfect, but it's a step toward giving people more control and clarity over their own immigration journey. At the end of the day, immigration is never just about paperwork. It's about dreams, family, freedom, and opportunity. This August 2025 Green Card overhaul might feel like a sudden storm, but if you know how to sail through it, it could be the wind that finally moves your journey forward. That's why staying informed is not just important, it's essential. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me through these crucial updates. This video might just be one of the most important pieces of content you come across this year if you're dealing with U.S. immigration. And if it helped you understand the new law better, or gave you the clarity you were looking for, please don't keep it to yourself. Share this with your family, friends, or anyone you know who's waiting on immigration news, because knowledge is power, and in this case, it could change someone's future. And one more thing, if you haven't already, hit that like button right now. It really helps boost this video so more people can find it and stay ahead of these changes. And if you're hungry for more updates just like this, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell, because I'll be covering everything you need to know about the evolving U.S. immigration system right here as it happens. Until next time, stay informed, stay prepared, and take care.